All right, guys, welcome to How to Make a Career Change. My name is Christian Hansen, and I'm really excited to be working with you and helping you raise your game to help you make the change you want in your life and in your career. So real quick, you're in the right spot if you're someone who wants to make a change, but it feels kind of overwhelming or daunting. You're not quite sure what the first step is, right? Or if you're someone who has the qualifications and experience, right? You know that you have what it takes to take your career to the next level, but you're just, and you know where you want to go, right? But you're not quite sure how to get there. We're going to be talking about that today as well. Or if you're somebody who, again, you have a vision, you're working on it really hard, but you're just struggling to really communicate your value and frame it in a way so that's really effective and influential. If you're someone who's experiencing any of these things or any other challenge that you're facing with trying to make a career change, you're in the right spot. We're going to be definitely addressing those things. I'm going to be giving you implementable strategies that you can be using. So real quick about me, my name is Christian Hansen. And in my career, I was the Associate Director of MBA Admissions at UC Irvine. I also helped run corporate internship programs for LG Electronics in South Korea and in China. And I'm a career coach who helps people make six-figure career moves. I also have a whole college consulting business. That's a whole other side of what I do. But I'm here today to help you take your career to the next level. So to start off, I want to share a story about how making a career change is kind of like surfing. Okay. Now, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were out surfing, you're paddling out, trying to get out to the waves, and all of a sudden your leash to your surfboard got caught on some undersea rocks, your legs started getting wrapped up in some seagrass, and you looked up to see in horror a set of 6 to 7 foot waves about to completely just pound you. Okay. What would you do in that situation? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And I want to talk to you about it and why it's important. So when I was younger, I grew up in Southern California and loved surfing, loved growing up surfing. And one time, my friend's dad, he took us and a bunch of friends, out surfing, and we get to this spot. It's one of my favorite beaches. And we just get out of the car, and I'm just throwing on my wetsuit. I'm getting my surfboard ready and leash wrapped onto my leg, and I'm running out to the water because I want to get in the water as fast as we could because there's fantastic swell coming in with some great waves. I wanted to be in the water first. Well, as I'm running towards the water, getting my board in and ready to go, I look back towards the parking lot, and there, calm as can be, my friend's dad is just standing there, calmly looking at the ocean. And I'm just like, man, what an idiot. Like, let's go. We're here to surf. And so I start paddling out, and immediately I started to hit some problems because the tide was still coming in a little bit. And so the rocks that were underwater were a bit more close than they would have been. Normally I'd be able to go right over them, but I had to navigate around them. And a couple of times my leash got snagged and I had to untangle it. But then also, as the waves are coming in and just kind of hammering you, there's seagrass and everything, and that's kind of wrapping around my leg. And it got to this point where literally I was caught and tangled by all this stuff, and this massive set of waves come in and they're just pounding. Now, if you've ever been in the ocean and there's waves coming, they're about to just completely take you out, it can be kind of scary. Well, I just had to kind of dive underwater, and I took a pounding, but eventually got my board back, and I just paddled as fast as I could to get past the breaks, finally make it to deeper water, and I'm safe. But then I realized that the tide this whole time has been slowly moving southward, and I'm now about 100 to 150 yards off from where I actually really wanted to be. So now I have to paddle. After paddling, my arms are really tired. I have to paddle all the way back up to get to the point break that I wanted to get to. And I get there, and guess who's there waiting? Guess who beat all of us? Well, it's my friend's dad. And he was just laughing as hard as could be because he looked at us. He's like, oh, how long did it take you guys? And we looked at it, our watches. It took like 45 minutes of just straight paddling to get out. And we were just confused. How did you get out here? How did you beat, didn't you go through all that? And he just said, well, I saw that set was coming in. I saw that the rocks were there. I saw that the seagrass was going to be an issue. So what I did was I just walked about 100 yards up the coast, and then I waited for the set to go. And then I just paddled in, and it was a lot easier. And I just made it out here in like 10 minutes. And he even caught a couple waves while the rest of us were still slogging away for our lives. So the difference here is that if we had taken the time to just look at the obstacles and then create a game plan, we would have saved a ton of time, a lot of effort, and I probably wouldn't have feared for my life that day. Okay. So I want to compare that to the career search a little bit. Now, just want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to cover today. So in my career, as I reviewed and interviewed thousands and thousands of candidates across the spectrum of different situations, I realized that, I have a front row seat in seeing how people deal with one of the most important challenges that we all face. And that is, how do you stand out when everybody else is trying to stand out too? Okay. And what I learned today are techniques and strategies of how masterful communicators communicate and work and operate. And then by comparison, how most everybody else communicates and operates, and how you can differentiate yourself. And the techniques that I'm going to share today have helped people get 6-figure director level positions. Okay, so I know this stuff works. I've seen it work. I'm going to share a couple stories from some of my clients, give you some examples a little bit later today. And ultimately, most people don't know how to position and sell themselves. And I'm really passionate about helping people learn how to harness and communicate their value so they can stand out, get chosen by decision makers, and ultimately take their lives to the next level. And I'd love to see how I can serve and help you to do that. So again, real quick, in the chat box there, I put the link for the worksheet that we're going to be working on. If you go on there, just simply enter email, and you'll get an email with this where you can download it. And if you guys can give me a thumbs up to make sure, just let me know that you got it. If the email came through, and also that you received it, that'd be great. So I want to make sure. Again, we have a couple minutes before we're getting there. Fantastic. Thank you, you guys. And plus at the end, I'm going to leave tons of time open for Q&A and see how I can help, help you implement it. Real quick, Monica, I'm just going to input the link right here. There you go. I must have added it right before you got on. So there's the link that if you just click on it, go to the bottom, put your email, then you'll get an email with this on there. All right. So we talked about how the career search is kind of like surfing. And I want to talk about what are some of the obstacles. Now, there are a ton of external obstacles and things you have to navigate in the career search. And in my one-on-one coaching, we talk extensively about each one of those. But I want to first start about the obstacles that are, inside our hearts and minds, and how those then impact the external world that we're trying to go and navigate. So I think the most common problems, again, I've got tons of notes that we're going to be working off of today. Some of the most common problems are, number one, either you have people who, they know that they need to make a change, right? But they're not sure what the first step is, because ultimately they think it's a very overwhelming process, and searching for a job is overwhelming. And so in some ways they put off taking that first step because they don't know what to do. That makes them stressed out, anxious. And I don't know about you, but I mean, stressed out and anxious people don't really do that well in interview and the job search process compared to other people who aren't anxious and stressed out. The other problem is, again, people who know where they want to go, but they're not quite sure how to get there. And so they're just doing the best they can. They're spinning their wheels. And eventually they get so tired and exhausted that in some ways they become desperate. And again, if you are desperate in the job search process, you're going to make mistakes. And you're going to, again, fail to stand out compared to everybody else who aren't desperate and who aren't making dumb mistakes. Then lastly, again, there are people who know where they want to go. They're trying to get there, but they're just struggling to communicate their value to others effectively and in a compelling way. And I find that this just makes them frustrated because they feel like they're just missing, they're getting close, but they're missing every time. And so in each of these cases, whether you don't know how to start, you don't know quite how to get there, or you don't know how to communicate your value. In each of these cases, you're actually creating an energy, a negative energy about you that and neural pathways that are going to influence your actions, and it's going to come out in networking as well as interviews. Okay, as someone who's interviewed thousands of people, there's a marked difference between someone who walks in the room, has that presence, and it's just, you can tell immediately, and it really turns me off as I'm trying to get to know them. So, and also it happens in networking, right? So I want to help you avoid that. We're going to break down each of these problems and give you some strategies and tools of how to rethink. I want to raise your thinking to a higher level so you can think more strategically about this. So I'm going to switch cameras real quick here. And, oh, thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. I'm just going to switch cameras. We're going to hop over to the whiteboard here. Okay. So let's just talk about, for those people who don't know quite where to start, or, how to even do this, I want to break down the job search process in terms of baseball. Okay. So in baseball, you got your diamond, right? You got home base, first base, you got second base, you got third base. And now most people who think about applying for jobs, it's just this wall, right? It's this insurmountable obstacle where they just have no idea what to do. But if we break down the process into simple steps, and then we talk about the strategies that you employ at the different steps, this is going to make the process a lot more simple and a lot easier to do, right? And less intimidating. So, and also in baseball, just as there's a set of strategies from getting from home base to first base, and there's a different set of strategies from getting from second base to third base, and so on and so forth, if you can understand at what point you are in the process, you can then switch your strategies so that you can be more effective. So to me, from home base to first base, I call this the positioning stage, okay, where you are looking out at what it is you're trying to accomplish, what is the goal that you have, what's the career that you want, and you got to understand how you're going to position your message. Now, the second stage, once you've positioned and you found a couple jobs or a role that you're interested in, then it turns into an objective information stage, right? You got to frame your information that's objective in a compelling way, right? How do you frame your competencies, your qualifications, your experience, the objective things that you bring to the table? Because you can have all these things, but if they're not organized in a way that's easy and quick to understand to the people you're trying to influence, then you're struggling. It's kind of like, you can have a pizza that has all the toppings in the world, but if it isn't sliced, then no one's going to touch it, right? This is all about how do you slice the pizza in a way that people will understand what you're bringing to the table. Next, from second base to third base, this is the subjective part, right? When you walk in an interview, they are no longer as concerned about your objective stuff. They're concerned about the subjective information, right? How do you play in the sandbox? What's your vision and goals? And, how are you going to make a difference? These are much more subjective indicators and things that they're measuring. Then lastly, once you've gone through the interview process and everything, then this is the negotiation phase, right? And this is where, you got an offer in hand, and then you have, how do you create a vision for your first 100 days on the job? You got the salary, you got the benefits, you got a couple of accommodations that you have the most amount of social capital at the beginning of this to influence your success in the job, right? So now here's why this is really important to kind of map these out. The challenge is that sometimes people they skip bases in the process, okay? So they may skip the positioning and they just go straight to, well, objective. They're framing, oh yeah, well, I have these qualifications and experience. Well, the thing is that if you haven't done the work in positioning, and we're going to really tackle this today, if you haven't done the work in positioning, then you're not going to know how to frame your objective information, right? You're not going to know how to craft your resume. You're not going to know how to frame your LinkedIn profile to really target the audience. So it's important that you do each step in order to get the other one. The second thing, when you do this, you got to understand, you got to switch strategies, okay? Because one of the biggest mistakes that happens in interviews is that when people walk into an interview, the reviewer is there to see their subjective information, right? A reviewer has already looked at your objective stuff. They say, oh yeah, he has the qualifications. She has the experience that we need. And when you walk into an interview, you have to switch gears, right? Because if you don't, what happens is, they're asking questions to get to know you, and they're seeing how you play for third base. But most people walk in and they're still trying to prove that they're playing for second base. Okay. They're still trying to just show, oh, I'm smart, capable, qualified, and passionate. And an interviewer is it's a missed opportunity. Okay. So when we break these down, this helps understand your strategies have to shift and how each one prepares you for the next set of strategies. Okay. So if you're someone who you're just like, what is the first step, right? Where do I even go? I need to make a change. Having the process broken down like this at least gives you a format, a framework of, okay, first I got to do some positioning. And we're going to tackle that today in the personal positioning worksheet. Now, let's go to the second problem, okay, where if you're someone who you know where to go, right? You know kind of where you want to get there, right? But you're not sure how to make that happen. Well, I want to talk about 4 key skill sets that happen at each of these stages that you can start to do. And again, there's an order to it and there's a structure that really helps you do it. So first, when you're, if you're trying to get somewhere, but you're not quite sure how to do it, well, in the positioning stage from, home base to first base, this is the value definition stage. Okay. You got to define your value. You got to frame what it is you have to offer. Again, we're going to dive into this in the next little bit here. And you got to frame what other people are going to see your value is. Why are you important to them, right? What is it you're going to make a difference in their company? Then once you've done that, the objective stage, to me, the second stage is gaining literacy. Okay. We need to think about companies that you're applying to, kind of like foreign nations, they're tribes. They have their own language, right? And after you have determined what your value is to an organization, then you need to become literate in the language of what they have, right? What are the terms? What are the industry terms and terminology? What are the trends that are happening in that company? Because when you are able to speak in terms of, oh, excuse me, sorry about that. When you're able to speak in terms of the language that they're doing, that they have there, that creates what's called in-group bias. Now, in my book, The Influence Mindset, I do a deep dive into this. We are wired to see people that we find similar to us. We're wired to give them the benefit of the doubt, to look at them more positively, right? And when you gain literacy through networking and you're able to speak the language and culture of another company, you are employing the benefits of in-group bias in your favor. Okay. So that's a really important stage. You can do that through like networking. And there's 3 types of networking categories that I train and I teach people on. We don't have time to cover that today. But again, there's different strategies of how you gain literacy. Then in the subjective stage, this is the strategic storytelling stage. If you can, simply just tell what your qualifications are, that's great. But you got to be able to know how to tell stories in a compelling and powerful way. And I have a formula that I teach my students and my clients on how to do that. And it definitely works because it makes you stand out compared to everybody else. And then lastly, the execution phase. Once you've done your value determination, once you've gained literacy and you know the language of the industry or company you're trying to tackle, and once you have developed a set of strategic stories that are intentionally designed to make you stand out, then it's a process of just executing it, right? Creating a series of habits that are going to get you to where you want to go. It's about implementing behaviors, right? So again, if you know where you're wanting to go, but you're not quite sure how to get there, These are the steps. If you figure out your value, you gain literacy in where you're trying to go, you develop strategic storytelling assets and capabilities, and then you create a system and a set of behaviors and habits that you're going to execute this. That's how you're going to get through this, right? Now, in terms of the third category, okay, we talked about that. Let's say you're somebody who you know where you're trying to go. Actually, I don't want to erase it yet. But you're not quite sure how to frame your value, right? I want to go over, we're going to tackle the personal positioning worksheet here in a second, but I want to change your thinking on this, okay? So real quick, you know, for those of you, I'm gonna share an idea here, and I'd love to see in the chat, you know, thumbs up if this makes sense. So when I was, again, interviewing thousands and thousands of people, and you know, as they're trying to influence me to choose them, okay, one of the things that I learned is that 99% of the time, you and I live in what I call a performance environment. And in a performance environment, success is based on whether or not you're smart, capable, qualified, or passionate, right? In school, if you study and know the materials, then you get paid. Or, excuse me, you get good grades. In your job, if you do well, then you get paid, right? If you're competent, you do well. And so we learn and we're trained and wired to see that success happens. Success comes to us when we prove that we're smart, capable, qualified, and passionate. However, every so often, we encounter what I call a selective environment, where the doors of opportunity swing or shut, right? And these are things like job interviews, right? Networking situations, college applications, grad school applications, where success is not based on how smart, capable, or qualified you are. Success is really about whether or not decision makers choose you. The challenge here is that people don't understand that the game has changed. And so they take the skill set that they've learned through years of an education system, years in their careers of what determines success. And then they walk into selective environments and they don't understand that it's changed. And now the success is really about influencing people to choose you. Does this make sense? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if this concept makes sense. This is really important as we move forward here. So perfect. Thank you so much, you guys. So as we are entering a selective environment, right? And again, I do a deep dive into this in my book, The Influence Mindset, which covers this. You need to learn how to influence people to choose you. And the way that you influence people to choose you is that you have to stand out and rise above the noise, right? And to do that, we got to raise your thinking so that people, if you are thinking at a higher level, you're going to communicate at a higher level. And if you're communicating at a higher level, you're going to stand out from everybody else who's still spinning their wheels. So I want to share one key thing, and that is when we frame their value, a lot of times we talk about passion, right? Oh, I'm passionate about this, or I'm really passionate about that. And I have a beef. I take issue with the word passion. And people kind of, when they hear why I take issue with this, at first they're kind of surprised at my vehemence against it. But here's the thing is that I really have an issue when people say, well, I'm passionate about this, or tell me about what you do. I'm passionate about that because it's overused. Yeah, thank you, Monica. Right. It is. There's a lot of problems. It's overused. It's not specific, and it's quite frankly not that helpful, right? If your job in the selective environment is to stand out, and now I'm going to erase it because I want to write stuff. If your job and goal in the selective environment is to stand out, and you're using language that's just like everybody else, then you're not going to stand out. You're going to sound just like everyone else, and there goes your chances. So here's the thing. It's overused. Number two, it's not specific. How many times have you heard people say, well, I'm passionate about helping people? right? Have you guys heard that before? Have people like told you that? Oh, I'm just passionate about helping people. So just show me in the chat real quick, thumbs up or yes. And when that happens, to me, yeah, everyone, you're right, Mitchell, everyone is. The problem is that if everyone is that, you're not going to stand out. A fireman is passionate about helping people. An HR rep is passionate about helping people. A financial advisor, right? You name any career, and they're all going to say the same thing. And so when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, if you don't know, or when you're trying to stand out, if you say, "Well, I'm passionate about helping people," can you see how that really doesn't help you, right? And so it's not a very helpful indicator, right? It doesn't really do anything for you. The second challenge here is that in order to influence somebody, you need to enter the conversation that's happening inside of their brains. Recruiters, I guarantee, are not sitting there going through applications and saying, "Gosh, if only I had somebody who's passionate about helping people," right? That is not what's going on in recruiters' brains. You need to enter the conversation that they're having. What's really happening is that they have a problem in their company that they need to solve. And that's what they're hiring someone for. So instead of, excuse me, I dropped the pen in my excitement and passion of the moment here. This is getting exciting, guys. Instead of speaking in terms of a passion, I want you to speak in terms of a problem-focused passion. When I speak to students and I train my clients, I say, don't pursue your passions, rather pursue problems that you're passionate about solving, right? Yeah, Ryan, that's a great point. Exactly. So instead of just a passion, I want you to think in terms of a PFP, a problem-focused passion. Here's why when you speak in terms of this is the problem I'm passionate about solving, here's why that stands out. First of all, it's a novel thing. It's a novel approach. When millions of other people are simply just droning on, "Oh, I'm passionate about this or passionate about that," and you walk in and say, "Here's this problem, and that's what I'm passionate about solving," you're going to stand out. It's a novel thing, and our brains are wired to pay attention to novelty. Think about it. When a recruiter is going through hundreds of applications a day, when someone speaks in a different way, that's going to stand out. That's going to capture their attention. Okay. Number two, you are bordering on the powers of inspirational communication. When you speak about a problem that you're trying to solve, you are inviting someone to imagine a future that you are creating. You are temporarily transporting them out of reality into a version of life that you have sole control over creating. That's an immensely powerful communication tool, right? Imagine if this problem were solved. What would that be like? That sentence right there is really powerful because it transports the listener, and you can do that. So not only are there profound benefits of speaking these terms, it's going to make you stand out. It's capturing the brain's attention. It's bypassing the brain's neurodefenses to speak directly to the hearts and minds of recruiters. But it also empowers you that you know that you're communicating at a higher level. And when you're speaking with confidence and with surety and with clarity, that's going to really make a difference. So let's talk about how this applies to the personal positioning worksheet. The best way that I know how to help people communicate in terms of a problem-focused passion is by bridging the gap. Okay. So, and I want you to frame the problem in terms of gaps, right? And what I mean by this, let me give an example. Okay, so I had a client that I was coaching last year, and he worked for an online real estate company, right? Who was a big player. Everyone would know the brand's name. And this company had a huge host of providing services and transactions for real estate, but they also were venturing into actually buying physical properties and then flipping them and then selling them for a profit. Well, the problem is that I helped this client illustrate it like this. There is a gap between the guys who are in the office building looking at Excel sheets and the contractors that we're hiring to flip these houses, right? You got the guys swinging the hammers and you got the guys making the Excel sheets. And because there's a gap there, And there's a gap in a number of ways: communication, in value, in relationships, processes, a number of things. There was a lot of friction on the side of the contractors. And so this company struggled to retain these contractors. That led to increased turnover, bad reviews, bad reputations of the company. And, it costs at least $5,000 to replace, an employee, and training costs. That led to longer flipping time periods, to flip the house. And also that means that ultimately led to higher expenses for the company. So however, if this gap is bridged, then what happens is, the benefits is that you have decreased turnover, you have decreased training costs, you have decreased time in flipping and holding homes, and also you're saving millions and millions of dollars. So when my client walked in to his interview and he's like, here's this gap, here's why this is a problem, and I am passionate about solving that gap and improving efficiencies and really making a difference in the lives of people who are, buying homes, creating better relationships and smoother processes with the company and the contractors. That's the problem I love to solve. Now, imagine how different that sounds, okay, compared to someone who's just like, oh, I'm passionate about efficiencies and process improvement. Can you hear a difference, right? Is there a difference when you hear that, right, between someone who says, oh, I'm passionate about process improvement or about, contractor relations, versus there's a gap, here are the pain points, here are the benefits, and here's, what I'm going to do here. And that's what I'm really excited about doing. That raises your level of communication to a higher level, right? So real quick, put your comments in the chat real quick and pull up the personal positioning worksheet to get this ready. Does that make sense? Can you hear and feel a difference between those two explanations? One is, the performance environment standard. Oh, I'm passionate, I'm qualified, and I'm capable. Then you have someone who's speaking with influence and passion. So let's pull up the personal positioning worksheet. Okay. So, and we're going to, I would love to go over this with you one-on-one, and I'm going to open up my calendar and love to schedule some one-on-one time with each of you so that I can help you implement and brainstorm other ideas. But let's just start here with the personal positioning worksheet. So question number one, right? What is the core problem that you're either solving now or in your prospective role that you want to solve, right? What is it that you're actually solving? And second, as you look at this, as you frame this gap, who are the stakeholders on both sides who are affected by this gap because it's not being solved? Now, is this gap between, question 3, is it between processes? Is it between people? Is it between, teams? Where is the gap that exists with these stakeholders? Number 4, what is the pain point, right? Is it time? Is it money? Is it energy, right? If this problem remains unsolved. And then, how does that impact the stakeholders? Number 5, what are the benefits if it's fixed? How are those pain points removed or resolved or ameliorated if that is solved? And number 6, what makes you the best person to bridge this gap? What about your background and experience is connecting directly to this is the reason why you want to solve it, right? Number 7, why do you love solving this problem? Really, legitimately, get nerdy about this. What makes you nerdy about solving this problem? Because when you communicate in terms of that kind of, nerd status, passion about solving a problem, that really comes across effectively, and it really is a powerful tool. Then lastly, after you go through all these questions, I want you to plug it into number 8, which is the bottom, right? Complete the following value sentence, right? I want to bridge the gap between the, question 3, the processes, the people, the teams, so I can help these stakeholders, right, reduce or avoid these pain points and increase these benefits. Okay. If you can complete and create a value statement like that, you have just set yourself apart in a very powerful and compelling way, compared to everybody else who is merely stuck talking in terms of passion, right? Or you're simply standing out from everybody else who's only speaking in terms of competencies, qualifications, and experience. Does this make sense, you guys? Right? Just real quick, give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat, so that, again, I'm making sure that we're all on the same page here, literally, on the personal positioning worksheet. So just a quick recap here, you guys. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad. That's awesome. So real quick recap as we kind of get to the Q&A session here in a minute. When you speak in terms of solving this gap, there's some powerful things that's going to happen, right? First, it's going to give you more confidence. And confidence is the, anathema to negative energy, stress, and anxiety and everything, because you've been there, right? Have you ever been in an interview and just kind of worried and stressed? Am I saying the right things? But if you got this in your back pocket and you're ready to go and deploy it with maximum devastation, that's going to be amazing. It's going to give you power as you walk in, confidence. It's a really amazing thing. It's going to also showcase you to be a strategic thinker. When you speak in terms of gaps, not only are you a better communicator, but it shows that you're thinking more strategically. So in the influence mindset, there's this fascinating piece of research I want to share with you guys from chapter 5. This is amazing. Okay. When I found this, I was doing some neuroscience research on how we choose people and how we go through that process. And this was amazing. One study conducted in 2013, researchers found that being a strategic thinker, when you're perceived as a strategic thinker, that it's one of the most effective ways to be seen as a leader. In fact, being perceived as a strategic thinker was, okay, I got to write this down. It was twice as effective as having strong communication abilities and almost 50 times more valuable than being merely highly skilled. When you are seen and perceived to be a strategic thinker, you are nearly 50 times more valuable in the eyes of a recruiter than everybody else who are merely spinning their wheels trying to prove that they are smart, capable, qualified, and passionate. Better yet, the most important finding from the study was that people with strategic thinking skills and perceived strategic thinking skills were 4 times, quote, 4 times more likely to be seen as individuals with significant future potential within their organizations, end quote. That's amazing, you guys. When you speak in terms of this gap, you are triggering fireworks inside the brain of someone. They have to pay attention to you. You are becoming immediately more valuable. And think about it. The conversation that's happening in a recruiter's brain is, I need to find someone who's not just good for the short term, but for the long term. And when you do that and you're able to speak influentially, you're going to be seen as an amazing prospect, and you've just increased your chances significantly from everybody else who either don't know what they're doing, don't know how to communicate, or are spinning their wheels just trying to sound smart, capable, qualified, and passionate. All right. So recapping here, we talked about some of the 3 major problems that people have in jobs. Either they need to make a change, but they're too intimidated because they don't know what the first step is. Or there's somebody who, maybe where you want to go, but you're just not quite sure how to get there, right? Or maybe you're somebody you're on track and you're going, but you're just, how do I frame my value effectively, right? When you break it down, to the 4 steps of, positioning, then switching gears to preparing your objective information, then switching gears to subjective information, and then to the negotiation stage. Or when you break it down to the 4 skill sets of framing your value, gaining literacy, learning strategic storytelling, and then creating habits of execution that are going to, make this happen. And then lastly, when you learn to frame your value in terms of gaps and you go through the personal positioning worksheet, can you see how this breaks down the barriers, removes the negative anxiety, recreates positive neural pathways that fosters confidence, and ultimately it helps you become a much more devastatingly influential communicator that is perceived to be almost 50 times more valuable than pretty much everybody else. Is this a powerful set of tools? And can you see how this can change the game for you? If you want, just again, put in the chat here. We're about to get into the Q&A. So as I mentioned, I would love to have a conversation with you guys and see how I can help you implement this, right? I want to see how I can help you go through the personal positioning worksheet. I'd love to go over it with you personally, right? And brainstorm other ways you can do it. I just put my link up in this is my Calendly link. It's my personal calendar. And I'm serious. I'd really love to connect and help go through the personal positioning worksheet with you. See what's helped. Maybe brainstorm some other ideas. See where you are in your career process, and explore how else you can become a phenomenal communicator that is going to achieve where you want to go. As I mentioned, I'm really passionate about helping people learn how to communicate their value, because that's an immensely fulfilling thing for me. And again, most people, they have what it takes, but they don't know how to frame it and position it so they can really be successful. And I love helping people gain that confidence, stand out from the crowd, rise above the noise, and influence decision makers to choose them ultimately, so you can take your life to the next level of where you're wanting to go. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure. Let's hop over to Q&A. I'd love to answer any questions. So you can unmute yourselves if you wish. But again, I look forward to seeing how I can better serve and empower you to take your life to the next level, your career especially to the next level. Okay, guys, what questions you got? How can I assist you? How can I serve you better today? And also let me know what has stood out. What's been the most helpful part about this? I'd love to kind of get some feedback too. It's the audience participation portion.
Thanks, Christian. This was very helpful. I really like the framework. Just a little bit about me. I'm kind of in between jobs right now.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I got let go a couple weeks ago, so I'm trying to get back on my feet and figure out what I want to do.
Wow.
I feel like I have a lot of good potential, and I
Yeah.
kind of know where I want to go, but I'm stuck right now.
Oh,
There's
no.
yeah. So trying to build my confidence, trying to put together some kind of framework, and this is really helpful, a good starting point. But I guess what would be kind of the first step you think I should do when I'm kind of starting that job search, starting to assess what I need to do?
Well, obviously it's going to be kind of, if you have, I mean, which kind of group do you find yourself most associated with, right? I want to make a change. I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah.
I know where I want to go. I'm not sure how to get there, right? Or I'm on track to going. I just don't know how to really sharpen my message.
I would say the first one.
The first one,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
So those are my favorite. I love working with, helping people trying to figure that out, because everything's on the table, right? And that's
Mhm.
immensely empowering, but also overwhelming, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of analysis paralysis that
Yes.
sometimes happens from that. So what I would do is to have some kind of deep questions about, what is a problem in the world that you are really interested in solving, right? And then as you look at all these different things that potentially you're interested in solving, then start to look at, well, what are the careers that circle around that problem? And who solves it and from what angle, right? And then is there a career approach that you're like, I really like how that career tackles it? That may simplify the options on the table for you. That can simplify how you want to kind of take a couple steps forward, because
Hmm.
ultimately your value to a prospective company is in the problem that you're going to solve for them, right?
Yep.
And so if you can become literate in the problems that are out there, and then you're able to really nail it down, and then start practicing how to communicate in that way, that's going to carry you from the beginning to the end of the whole process.
Okay. No,
Right.
that's a really good approach. I love solving problems, so that's a really good thing. Just to be able to focus on one thing, and I think that that would really be beneficial. I feel what I find is I'm in supply chain, so it's like, do I just stay in supply chain, or are there other areas I can go into? So it's
Yeah. No,
yeah,
your first step is trying to just narrow it down, at least for the first stage, right? Of just saying,
yeah,
okay, let's break it down. I want to add one more thought to that. And this is some really kind of advanced level communication strategy here. And it comes down to this. When I and some of you may have heard this story before. So I worked in ultra high net worth finance at one point in time. And I was literally to be a client for this company I was working for, you have to have at least $10 million in assets that you can have managed. So this is high level wealth here. And one day I woke up and I got a notification on my phone that the markets had taken a hit that day. And it was my first year on the job, and I was kind of stressed out, like, oh man, okay, how's today going to go? So I get into the office, and immediately half the office, the phones are just going off the hook. People, it's just trying to put out fires everywhere. Clients are just really upset, trying to free, their money's at stake. But then I got to my part of the office, and it was really quiet, and I was really confused by that. And so trepidation, I opened my computer, I looked at my emails, and then nothing. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I look at my phone, there's no messages that are screaming. So I talked to my boss. I'm like, how come we're pretty quiet over here, but everyone else is really scrambling over there? And he said, well, think about it. Our book of business is a lot of widows and elderly ladies who they've been through market cycles all the time. They're not worried about this, right? The people that are on that side of the building, they're handling new books of business where they haven't been through this before. So it's interesting. Same situation, different reactions. And this taught me an important lesson, which is what I'm getting at. A problem is not a problem until someone feels something. Okay. A problem is not a problem until someone feels something. So as you're trying to narrow down the problems that you want to solve, the adjoining question I would tack on to that is, well, what are the emotions that people have because of this problem? And because if you don't resolve the emotion, in some cases, you're not going to resolve the problem. And so as you think about it, what emotions are there as well? Because if you can nail down the emotions that people have or organizations have because of this, you're going to be a lot more effective as a communicator. So,
great, thank you.
yeah. What other questions, you guys?
All right. So let's say you're in the interview.
Yeah.
And really the information you have for the interview is just what they had for like the qualifications and the brief little spiel that they had put on their job.
Yeah.
Their job thing. So what is the best way, in your opinion, to determine those gaps so that you can best express how you can bridge those gaps?
So you're in an interview and they ask a question, and so how do you go from there and kind of set the stage a little bit?
Or more like they're asking you like the regular questions that they would ask like anybody else, but it doesn't necessarily address like the gaps. Do you use that time like at the end when they give you some questions to help try to determine what those gaps are, to kind of be able to put yourself out there a little bit more?
So big word part here is pivot. In your responses, a lot of times interviews go like this, right? Well, answer this question. It's kind of, we'll jump and you say, well, how high? Do this. Okay, do that. It's kind of also kind of like a game of Twister, okay, put your arm here. Okay, cool. Put your arm over there. Great. Leg over here. Great. But in your responses, if you can take the time and you prepare in advance, that each of your stories pivots in some way towards communicating this vision. And I teach people how to do this. And there's a definite way you can do it. Then that's how you open up that discussion. Because they have their set interview questions, no doubt. But if you're opening up other things You're going to invite them to ask deeper, more insightful questions. And so use your platform, use your stories as a platform to pivot and, and connect it too. So, for example, you're answering, so tell us about, your work history, right? Tell us about your background. And so let's say, yeah, well, I was in these customer facing roles for this number of years, and I just absolutely loved the interactions that I had with, clients, which brings me to, that's a phrase you use to pivot, which brings me to one of the reasons I'm really interested in your company. You guys do a great job really serving customers in this way that I find that no other company really does to the same degree. And I really love that about you guys, right? See how, again, which brings me to, that's a phrase where you can easily and seamlessly pivot into start expressing in not an offensive way, but you're going on offense there, right? You're not in defense. So that's one simple way that you can do it, where you just kind of take a little detour and you're still in line and you're adding better, more compelling touch points. And that's one way to do it. There's a lot of other like techniques of how to do that though. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any others? Yeah. What other questions? Cool. Well, I mean, I couldn't possibly have just said all of this in such an eloquent way that you're just either stunned in silence and amazed, or I couldn't have answered everything as well. But again, I would love to have a conversation to help you guys really implement, the personal positioning worksheet and to go over it with you and to make sure that, because there's sometimes one of the challenges, it's really helpful to have somebody with a 30,000 foot view to maybe offer a different perspective or approach. So, because sometimes we're just so close to our own narrative and our own story, it's hard to kind of take a step back. And that's what, in our call, I'd love to maybe provide that and, make sure that we can get you sorted out on taking the right steps forward. So, any other questions? Just other guys didn't get a chance to ask anything. Second question then for you is what was most beneficial from today? What content, what approach, what strategy, what brilliant and amazing, eloquent thought was most helpful? I'm just curious what stood out to you guys.
Hey, Christians, DJ, I'll give it a go. I mean, just generally seeing it laid out, right? Visual with something that is so ambiguous as the process, right? The job process.
Yeah.
Having, like we said, a framework, and then your baseball analogy, step by step. You could have written it 1, 2, 3, 4, but just seeing it like going around the bases, helps process. You can't skip a base, right? All that sort of stuff is very helpful.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you. I appreciate it. What else?
Hey, Christian, this is Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, I got a question. Is part of the program involve, written materials like cover letters, cover emails, resumes, and how to stand out? Because those are the times can be screening tools.
Yeah. Well, in my one-on-one coaching, we definitely tackle those, and there's templates and there's ways to the execution part. There's different strategies and ways of thinking about those. And so, yeah, we work on those together. That again, that's my what I do that with my one-on-one clients as we're kind of helping them make the career transitions. But yeah, we do definitely tackle that stuff.
Christian Mitchell.
Hey, Mitchell, great to see you.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
One point that I found particularly enlightening was the instead of like just framing it in terms of problems I'm passionate about solving. Just kind of when you were talking about that, just kind of helped clarify, the point of telling stories, because I've received that advice before, like in interviews, tell stories, that makes them more interesting to listen to and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then tying it to a specific problem or situation the company is facing was a connection that I hadn't made yet, and that was really enlightening.
Cool. I'm glad. Glad that was helpful. Again, yeah, it's we walk into interviews thinking that it's just about proving my objective qualifications. Here's what I can do. I'm really good at this. But that recruiters' brains are so overwhelmed by information and by hundreds of other applicants that in some ways their brains just block out all of that. But when you start speaking in problems, it literally goes past the neurodefenses and it connects directly to the heart and mind. And actually, yeah, just a shameless plug here. My book, The Influence Mindset, tackles all of these issues and even shows you a lot of the research, and I have tons of stories and examples behind it. And if you guys are also thinking of like what's a good next step of trying to wrap your brains around this, highly recommend this. It's on Audible and Amazon and all that other stuff. So I think that this would be a real benefit to you guys too. So, well, thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate that.
Hey, Christian, in terms of what I liked about the program was the stories. I thought those were really helpful. You sort of modeled that storytelling in this presentation. So I thought that was great.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it, Rob. Well, you guys, we're coming up to the top of the hour here. Want to make sure you get on to the rest of your day. Have a great one. Again, reach out, let's schedule a session to go over your personal positioning worksheet and see how else I can serve you. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your weekend. And if you have any other questions, again, my email is christian@thechristianhansen.com. If you have any other questions, just reach out. But otherwise, take care, and I look forward to staying in touch. See you guys.